that you tell us who we are.
We have that kind of worked into our introduction. Do you want us to still give it to you now?
You know, if you would rather do it that way, that's just absolutely fine. But actually, you know, I think we'd like to, you can tell us in the introduction, but just tell us now.
Okay. You all represent a board of director at a various Native American casino, and we are a group of external consultants.
Okay. With that, let's start.
So good afternoon, everyone. We are Marist College, and today we are here to present Indian Roulette, the social and economic impact of Native American casinos.
I'm Corinne Brockenfall.
I'm Ben Del Giorno.
I'm Anthony Grossi.
Madeline Cashew.
And I am Jenna Snyder. For the context of our presentation today, we would like to ask you, our audience members, to envision that you each represent a board of director for a various Native American casino. For the sake of this presentation as well, we are going to envision ourselves as a group of external consultants that you have asked to come in and evaluate how you are conducting business. Before we offer you a solution, we would like to first give you some background on the gaming industry today.
So the gambling industry was really created in 2300 BC in China, but was more prevalent in the United States in 1931, which directly correlates with the height of the Depression. So two facts that we'd like to just give you some context on is the establishment of tribal sovereignty and a Native American compact. The establishment of tribal sovereignty was created so that Native American tribes would have the ability to govern themselves, but would also understand the place that the federal and state governments would play. Additionally, a Native American compact is a compact and document, very detailed document, that is created when a Native American tribe wishes to establish a Native American casino. This compact is very detailed and thorough and goes over all the facility operations that are going to occur so that the state government understands what the Native American tribe wishes to accomplish. Now, prior to 1980, there were no regulatory legislations for Native Americans, and because of this, Native Americans were unable to enter the market for gambling. So currently there are 1,511 casinos in the United States today. So clearly this is a very large and very profitable market. Business Insider has actually given us the information that over $15 million in Las Vegas is spent in gambling daily. So Native American tribes really wanted to become part of this market share, and in 1988, the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act was created. This was created for two purposes. The first was so that Native American tribes would be the sole beneficiaries of these facilities, and the second would be that they were the sole owners of these facilities. Now, the gaming industry today for Native Americans, there are over 562 federally recognized Native American tribes in the United States, and over 362 of them maintain casinos. We believe, as your external consultants, that Native American casinos are operating under a different legal framework than commercial casinos. And because of this, we have established a problem statement that we are going to fulfill throughout our entire presentation. This problem statement reads, what operational changes should you, the members of Board of Directors for Native American casinos, implement to ensure you are conducting business ethically? And we're going to answer this problem statement using our ethical consideration, talking about the financial implications as well as the legal implications.
But before we can delve further into our presentation, we would first like to give a very brief overview of the solution that we will ultimately be suggesting at the end of this presentation. So the first part of the solution is to adjust the state compacts, which Maddie briefly talked about in the background, addressing what compacts are. So why we would want to do this is to ensure that business is conducted ethically, to benefit the members of the tribes, and also to ensure future operations for your casinos as well. The main change we want to see in these compacts are in the financial sector of it, so including state payments and or the tax structure that Native Americans currently have, and then changing it to being something different. And then finally in our solution, we also look to ultimately eradicate the distributions that the profits have right now that go to the members of the tribe. So in order for us to kind of give a roadmap of where we're going and how we got there, we use the analytical methodology of the deontological framework of ethics. So this framework, while it is an ethical framework, is very practical and relevant, we believe, in this issue, and relates very strongly to the topic at hand. So there are three main components to this, and they include duty, intent, and universal law. What duty means is that there are certain moral rules that everyone has a duty to follow simply because it's the right thing to do. The second component is the intent component. What this means is that a person's intentions justify the action. And then the third part is universal law. What this means is that you would be okay with your actions ultimately becoming universal or general law, or in other words, that everyone should do the same thing if in the same situation as yourself. So with this in mind, we came up with an ethical consideration, or a question that we will ask through the remainder of this presentation. And this question is, do you, as members of various boards of directors for various Native American casinos, have the obligation or the duty to conduct business to the betterment of the quality of life for your tribes? Now, before we answer this, we first want to go into the current legal structure that Native American casinos are facing today.
Currently, Native American casinos operate under a very different legal framework than commercial casinos. The Native American Gaming Commission is the commission in charge of implementing the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act of 1988. This act was set forth to establish gaming as an industry for Native American reservations. It basically gave the legal right of Native Americans to have a gaming industry. The commission sets out to protect all these listed before me, but the primary two are to protect gaming as a means of revenue for the tribe, as well as it establishes the primary beneficiaries of these gaming revenues as the tribesmen living on the reservations. The environment for the commercial casino industry is vastly different. Each state has its own legislation in terms of what casinos are allowed to operate, what their tax structure is, what licenses they need to have in order to operate. And the state government set out to protect gaming as a means of revenue for the state in terms of the taxes they collect, and establishes the primary beneficiaries of these tax revenues as the citizens living in the state. Now let's take a contrasting view of Native American casinos and their operations compared to commercial casinos. Opening a Native American casino is vastly different than opening and operating a commercial casino. In order to operate a Native American casino, you as the board of directors would approach a state government and negotiate a compact in which tax structures and the logistics of what the operation will entail is all spelled out. Where opening a commercial casino is more of a corporate feel, where licenses and permits must be obtained, and the tax structure is set forth by the state. As you can see, the payments vary from Native American casinos to commercial casinos. Payments for Native American casinos range anywhere from 12 to 25% as the highest, where commercial casinos are anywhere from 27 to 56.23%. We've highlighted Florida as an example at the bottom for a very specific reason. Florida, the Seminoles currently pay 25% taxes to the state, where commercial casinos pay 35%. And currently we chose Florida because it's a prime example of a lot of controversy that's going on in the United States in terms of current court cases that are going on, but we'll touch upon that later in the presentation.
So we understand you're probably sitting here thinking, well, I'm operating within my legal environment correctly, and we would totally agree with that. You are following all of the legal indications that have been set forward for you. However, what we are here to say today is that just because something is legal does not necessarily make it ethical. So, back to using the framework that we've identified before, we have identified that there is a certain duty that you, as the various members of boards of directors for Native American casinos, have, and it's the duty to operate your businesses ethically, and also a duty to your tribe members. And then going down to intent, the intentions of your actions should ultimately be to improve the quality of life for the members of your tribe. And through these actions, there would be this universal law created that all businesses should ultimately operate to the betterment of society. So after considering the current legal environment and answering this ethical question, we would now like to look more into the financial environment.
So the financial characteristics of both Native American casinos and commercial casinos differ substantially. So first we'd like to provide you with a look at the financial aspects of Native American casinos, and then provide a contrasting view of commercial casinos. So the graph above, provided by the National Indian Gaming Commission, provides a look at revenues from 1995 through 2013. And as you can see, over this period, revenues have more than quadrupled among Native American casinos and now reach almost $30 billion. The next graph here, provided by Bank of America Merrill Lynch Global Research, provides us with a look at the market share of both Native American casinos and commercial casinos. And as time progresses, you can see that Native American casinos garner a large portion of market share, and now it almost reaches 50% of the industry.
In addition to looking at the revenues held at current Native American casinos, it's also important to analyze the tax structure and profit distribution that exists at Native American casinos. As previously mentioned, currently Native American casinos are taxed at rates that range from 12% to 25%. After these taxes are paid to state governments, salaries are paid at competitive prices. After these tax payments are made and salaries are paid, profits remain. What Native American casinos do with their profits is a very unique concept. Essentially, Native Americans take the profits that they've earned and distribute them proportionally to members of their tribes as a form of income. To demonstrate this in further detail, we will look at Foxwoods casinos in the state of Connecticut. Foxwoods Casinos is one of the largest casinos in the world today. In 2009, the casino was so large and so profitable that they were able to give every member of their tribe $100,000 worth of income distributed directly from their profits. However, as the gaming industry continues to grow, as we've already shown, these profits continue to grow as well, and people's reliance on these profits becomes more and more reliant. In 2010, however, Foxwoods casinos, due to increased competition, incurred $2 billion worth of debt for the first time in casino history. In March of 2010, they were forced to halt the distribution of these profits. In turn, the tribes suffered substantially. They entered huge rates of poverty, unemployment, and lots of criminal action started to occur on the reservation. As demonstrated on the graph behind me, which is provided to us by The Economist in 2015, currently 60% of Native American casinos participate in this profit distribution. 40% of Native American casinos do not participate in this profit distribution. However, as this graph shows, 90% of casinos between 2000 and 2010, 90% of Native American casinos between 2000 and 2010 experienced an increase in their poverty rate due to these pro-rata distributions that they are giving their tribal members. We do not see this as being a way of bettering the quality of life for the tribal members, but the poverty rates are not the only statistics that we can utilize to show that the current Native American casino operations are decreasing the quality of life for Native American tribal members. These statistics, provided to us by the National Bureau of Economic Research, show us that crime rates, bankruptcy, and auto thefts have also increased substantially in the 4 years after opening a Native American casinos. These statistics apply to the 60-mile radius that surrounds every Native American casino. So after looking at these statistics, it is evident that the way you are currently conducting business, the way you're currently paying your taxes and currently distributing your profits, is not truly benefiting the quality of life of your tribal members. So to see and contrast how commercial casinos are conducting business, we have some statistics to show you as well.
So first, taking a look at the historical revenues of commercial casinos, the graph provided above includes data from the American Gaming Association illustrating historical revenues from 2003 through 2012. And as you can see from the graph, there was a period of decline in contrast to Native American casinos, which have experienced a constant and continuous growth since their inception. And in 2012, it's important to note that commercial casinos saw over $37 billion in revenue.
So as this suggests, revenues have also been growing in the commercial gaming industry. But it's also important to analyze how they are taxed and how they distribute their profits. Commercial casinos are taxed at rates that range from 27% to 56.23%, substantially higher than the rates that Native American casinos are currently taxed at. After these tax payments are made to state governments and salaries are paid at competitive prices, we have some profits that remain. These profits are obviously less than the profits that are maintained at Native American casinos because tax rates are higher. However, unlike Native American casinos, commercial casinos are able to keep these profits for themselves and put them into retained earnings accounts. The graph on the board right now is provided to us by the Pennsylvania Gaming Commission Board. I know we've already talked a lot about Florida as an example. However, this information for the state of Florida was difficult for us to obtain, so we have obtained it from the Pennsylvania Gaming Commission, and we do believe that Pennsylvania is another good example of what currently consists of the legal structure in commercial gaming today, which is why we have chosen to use it in this example. As you can see, Pennsylvania's state gaming revenues are taxed at a rate of 55%. So casinos are able to hold 45% of their profits for their retained earnings accounts. But the 55% that is taxed to state governments is distributed to various different projects, such as public education, law enforcement, financial dependency for the elderly, and numerous other areas. What this suggests is that the higher tax rates are actually benefiting people that live in the state. People now have better access to public education, better access to law enforcement. The elderly are able to live a more financially stable life. And we see this current tax structure and profit distribution structure as a way that benefits all members of society.
So, at the request of you for external consultation, we have ultimately come to answer this problem statement, which is what operational changes should you, as various boards of directors of various Native American casinos, make to ensure that you are conducting business ethically. So, the solution that we have sought out to this problem, as we briefly stated before, includes adjusting the state compact. So the adjustments we want to see are more to mimic the commercial casinos in terms of tax structures and payouts. And this will ensure that you are conducting business more ethically, working towards the betterment of your tribal members, and also ensuring future operations. And then the second would be to halt the pro rata distributions, as we find that it's not necessarily beneficial to the members of the tribe. Now, we understand this does seem counterintuitive from a business standpoint. You're probably sitting here wondering, why should I be giving the state more money? These are all questions that we're going to address in our when we talk about the impacts of our solution. But something else that we also want to mention is that we're not asking you to relinquish your tribal sovereignty. What we are asking is that you fulfill the duty to the tribal members that you have, and that your intentions are to improve the quality of life for them. We're not asking you to break the law, we're not asking you to change the law, we're asking you to rise above the law and do what is ethically right for the situation. So now, let us paint you a picture of what could possibly happen if this solution is not implemented.
In order to show you what could possibly happen if you do not accept our solution, we are going to look at the gaming industry in Florida today. In Florida, there are currently 7 different casinos. 5 of these casinos are owned and operated by the Seminole Native American tribe. 5 years ago, when the Seminole Indians decided that they wanted to open a Native American casino, they were required to approach the Florida state government, and under the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act of 1988, they had to negotiate a compact agreement. One of the terms of this compact agreement was what percentage of their revenues they will pay the Florida state government. It was agreed upon that the Seminole Native American tribe would pay the state government 25% of their revenues every year. Throughout the past 5 years, the Seminole Native American tribe has paid the state government over $1 billion worth of tax revenue. This is very important because in July of this year, the state compact distinguished between the Seminole Native American tribe and the Florida state government is going to expire. And the Seminoles and the Florida state government are currently undergoing numerous court cases to determine whether or not this compact is going to continue on in the future. The Florida state government is very reluctant to grant the Seminoles an extension of this compact agreement because they recognize what we have already told you. They recognize that the current tax structure and current profit distributions at Native American casinos is not helping improve the quality of life for Native American tribes. In addition, the Florida state government also recognizes that the current tax structure for commercial casinos is more beneficial to all members of society compared to the current tax structure of Native American casinos. We would love to see your casinos to continue to operate in the future. Therefore, from a business standpoint, we think to ensure that your companies will be able to operate seamlessly into the future, you should consider our solution. To explain more the impacts that our solution will have on your corporations and on your tribal members, we would now like to discuss the impacts in further detail.
Now that my colleagues have all spoken about the two-part solution we are proposing, and have also mentioned that you might be sitting there as the board of directors for Native American casinos wondering, why would you pay more taxes to the state governments? It does seem counterintuitive. Well, here are our answers. We have a three-part solution, and the impacts of this is because we believe it's going to overall improve the conditions in your society. Yes, you'll be paying more taxes to state governments, but you're going to have access to better public education and better public safety. This is because the increase in state taxes will increase the available funds that state governments will now have. And because all children and all individuals use these programs within the society, it's going to overall improve these conditions. Additionally, we believe that it's overall going to improve the conditions of Native American reservations through unemployment, through lower poverty rates, lower health problems, and lower crime rates. We believe that this is going to occur because we are now going to decrease and ultimately relinquish pro rata distributions. This is going to increase the incentives for tribal members to go out and find work and overall increase their quality of life. Third, we believe that it's going to improve the financial condition in Native American casinos. We believe that this is going to occur because through the increase in retained earnings, Native American casinos will now have the ability to take their retained earnings and use them at their discretion. They have a duty to use their retained earnings for the betterment of society and help their tribal members, and through the increase of retained earnings they can use it through community development or further growth and expansion of their Native American casino. So we have identified all of these impacts of our solution. We've also gone over the two-part solution to answer our problem statement and our ethical consideration. That still stands. Do you, the members and board of directors of Native American casinos, have an obligation to to ensure you are conducting business ethically? We have identified that yes, you do, under the deontological framework that has the duty and intent and universal law that all businesses should conduct business ethically. So at this time, we'd like to thank you for your time and consideration, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Let's reset our timers. As chairman of the board, I have some question about whether what you're doing is simply taking away from the casinos the rights that we had as a result of how we lost our land in the first place. So when you talk ethics to us about taking care of our own people, it sounds as though what you're saying from an ethical standpoint is our people should go get jobs and they should be covered by higher taxes in terms of school systems, and that you're essentially saying that we're not equipped to provide for our community. And I guess I need you to talk more about on what basis you conclude that. You've mentioned some statistics, but you're essentially talking about social responsibility that we have to our own people, and you're saying that we failed. Is that correct?
Sure. So to answer your question, just to restate the question so everybody has had a chance to hear it, she's asking if we think that they're failing at their social responsibility to better the quality of life for their tribal members. We do think that you are equipped and have all the tools and resources that you need to create create life on your reservation that is a very good life for your tribal members. We just do not think the way you are currently conducting business is giving the best quality of life to your members that could potentially be had. And we just think that if you accept the considerations that we have provided to you, we're not necessarily, like we have said, it sounds counterintuitive to pay more taxes and to take away some of the income, but we do think that having a job will decrease the poverty rate, will decrease the unemployment rate, it will decrease the amount of drug usage that is currently very prevalent on your Native American reservations and the health problems that are very prevalent on the Native American reservations. So what we're ultimately trying to do is to incentivize all members of your tribe to get jobs and to live a life with a higher quality of life. And we do think you are equipped currently to do that, but if you take these further steps on your own, not because you are required to by the law, but if you do it on your own, you will see that the quality of life on your reservations will rise exponentially.
Thank you. Next question.
Yeah, so I actually have a question about these statistics that you said that crime and poverty and other, well, let's go just say with crime increased within a 60-mile radius of a casino after it opened, and with respect to the Native American casinos. What are the numbers what about the increase in crime around commercial casinos? And I asked that with the knowledge that in Maryland a casino opened, and anecdotally, I don't have the statistics, but anecdotally crime has increased in that area.
We have seen that as being a trend in regards to the gaming industry in general. We do not have the actual statistics on the commercial gaming industry and its effect on crime to show you today. We do recognize that it also exists, but we just would like to point out the numbers that we showed you today, just to show you that Native American casinos also experience the same phenomenon in increasing crime rates.
Okay, so my question is more coming from the ethical framework that you laid out. So if I understood it right, ultimately the universal law part is that, if we're doing what's right under this framework, then it should be applicable to all people, and we want to change the tax structure so it benefits all citizens of the state equally. But as a tribal member, I'm not the same as a state citizen. I'm actually a member of a sovereign nation. So what is my duty to the broader state when my agreement with them is fundamentally different, because we have to work with them to come to the agreement because we're operating within the boundaries of the state. But ultimately, a lot of things, the money for education, public safety, those agreements are very different than what just like a resident of the state gets. My arrangement on all of those issues is very different than a state citizen. So what is my obligation to provide the same thing if I'm not getting the same education money, if I'm not getting the same level of public safety? I'm actually responsible for policing my own reservation. I don't get state highway patrol on the reservation. So
Fantastic question. So what her question is really targeting us on is the first part of our two-part solution, and that is the increase in tax payments to the state governments. So why we are increasing the tax payment to the state governments is actually not to benefit state citizens. We recognize that a consequence of this solution is that state citizens will all benefit from this increase in tax revenue. However, the intent of our action is to better the life of the quality of Native Americans on the reservation. And we see that these increase in tax payments are actually going to help the Native Americans as well. So to touch on that, we'll talk about the 2 points that you mentioned, public education and public safety. So in order to do that, I'm going to have my colleague Corinne talk about the public safety aspect, and my colleague Anthony talk about the public education aspect.
So in terms of the public safety, there was actually a law passed not too long ago, Public Law 280, which basically states that any criminal cases or any cases of crime are actually the state law enforcement actually goes onto the reservation to process these. So by improving the amount of money or increasing the amount of money that we can give to law enforcement means that you're bettering the law enforcement. So when they are on your tribe and they are processing your case courses, it is also affecting those on the tribe as well and the members of your tribe as well.
To discuss the educational problem that you raised, according to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, excuse me, last year 42,000 Indian children received education on reservations, as compared to over 1 million receiving education in public schools off the reservations in states. So Indian children will be receiving the educational money in terms of funding for their schools that they are receiving off the reservations.
So just to conclude, the amount of tax revenues that will be given to state governments that will then be put back into increasing the public safety and increasing the public education, both of them will be utilized by the people that you govern on the Native American reservation land.
I need to go back to my original question because it feels to me as though you're essentially advocating for assimilation.
Okay.
And that means that it is asking a voluntary structure to do away with the privilege that we have. And the question that I have is, if the question is a better quality of life for our tribe, the solution you're presenting essentially assimilates us as ordinary citizens. And I have real trouble with that.
So there is a part of our solution that we did forget to mention when we were doing our PowerPoint, so I'm going to let my colleague Maddie now discuss your question in more detail.
So something to take into consideration is the pro rata distribution. So
I'm sorry, the what?
The pro rata distribution. So ultimately, my colleague Jenna spoke about how in Connecticut and Foxwoods they were able to give their tribal members $100,000. So that was the tribal members' incentive. They were given $100,000 according to their state compact. So that seems great, and ultimately what our solution to the question that we identified was we'd be kind of relinquishing the pro rata distributions gradually over time. This does seem counterintuitive, and I know how it sounds that you'd be taking money away, so how are we actually improving the quality of life for our tribal members? But ultimately, through the decrease in pro rata distributions, we are allowing the tribal members to find jobs, to find careers, and not be totally reliant upon those pro rata distributions, which ultimately decreases their incentives and decreases all their incentives to work. So by giving them these pro rata distributions, we are ultimately increasing poverty and increasing unemployment, and thereby decreasing the overall quality of life.
And our ultimate solution is not technically arguing for assimilation. We do not want to see the laws change. We want the laws to remain as they are. We're not trying to ask that your tribal sovereignty is relinquished. We just see that there is an opportunity for you, members of the board of directors at various Native American casinos, to conduct business differently than that which is required of you. And we don't want to do this right now, take our solution, run with it, and see how it works. We would like to come back and consult with you each year to see how our solution is being implemented, to see how the quality of life on your reservations is improving, and if it's not improving as quickly as we would like it to, or we're starting to realize that there's other problems that exist, we would like to amend our solution each year for the next 5 years as we see necessary to ensure that we are not strictly assimilating Native Americans with other state citizens, and that you still will have your tribal sovereignty.
I'm a little uncertain about one point of your argument, or one prong of it, which said that as at a certain point, poverty increased within the reservations at a greater rate than it did outside of the reservations. And I'm thinking that that actually had more to do with the recession at the time, that the period that you selected, that in fact those losses were not attributed to the distribution of money to individuals, but were the result of lower revenues, essentially. And therefore people were being let go from work in these environments, in these casinos, and there was less money being distributed. So I'm not sure about that part of your argument. Could you address that?
Absolutely. As we've all known, America hit a very great recession in 2007 to 2008. The economy has started to grow again since that period. So another fact that I would like to present you with is a fact that the National Indian Gaming Commission published in 2014, so years after the recession hit. In 2014, the National Indian Gaming Commission announced that 29.1%, so nearly 30% of Native Americans in America today are living in poverty. And this number has increased from the previous year. In the previous year, it was 27.5% of Native Americans were living in poverty. So even as the economy continues to grow, it appears that the poverty rate for Native Americans is growing even faster. And that poverty is currently the highest poverty rate possessed by any cultural group in America today. The Native Americans do live in the highest rates of poverty compared to any other race in America today.
This is a follow-up to that, the same point, but so in Alaska, I know that they also had trouble with the oil payouts, that as the price of oil fluctuates, as the recession came about, as things change, that, you know, one year they're all receiving $1 million, the next year they're having to pay taxes, you know, I mean, that's not being extreme about it, but so those are forces that are beyond their control. Should we ask Alaska to set the example for us of what, you know, what other entities besides us should go out and do what you're asking, which is essentially a redistribution of wealth?
Sure. In this context specifically, because you, Native Americans, do have tribal sovereignty, it's a little bit different. We're not trying to change the law structure, so we're only really asking the Native American population to just recognize the social ethical responsibility that they have to make sure the quality of life for their people is as high as it can possibly be. So we have not specifically looked into the oil industry or looked into any other type of commercial industry, because this Native American sovereignty is a very unique and specific component of this case. That is why I don't think under what we've already analyzed we could apply it to any other type of commercial industry today.
When you made the argument for the ethical consideration about bettering the quality of life for members of your tribe, could you identify for us what the elements of better quality of life really constitute?
Yeah, sure. So when we talk about the better qualities of life for Native Americans, what we're ultimately talking about is a lot of the statistics that we've already presented. So we don't want to keep seeing increases in unemployment. We don't want to keep seeing increases in poverty. We want to see improvement in those areas. And what we're seeing right now is the reliance, especially on the pro rata distributions, is actually really hurting because we can't see those increases, especially when places such as Foxwoods see such a decrease in their revenues and can no longer provide the monetary aspects of a positive quality of life to their tribal members.
Right, but what I guess would be helpful, not relying on your statistics, but identifying what would constitute a better quality of life. Now, you've said more jobs, and you've said less crime. What other things are inherent in your sense of what a better quality of life for the African American communities would be?
So
not African American, Native American, sorry.
So for the Native American communities, like other than the ones that you've already pointed out, also providing better education, which would obviously really help, especially as you grow up and through the future of your life, improve the quality of life.
I think to answer this question, it's really important to look back towards the history a little bit more. In the 1980s, poverty was still incredibly high for Native Americans living on the reservation. Unemployment was very high, crime rates were very high, and the Native American population back then was much smaller. So when the National Indian Gaming Commission was formed and the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act of 1988 was formed, these were essentially meant to be stimulus packages to the Native American environment. The government, the federal government, created this commission and created this legislation in hopes of giving the Native American community an opportunity to create more revenues for themselves and create a better quality life for their people. But what has happened in the years since 1988 is Native Americans, even if you have 1% Native American heritage, have been flooding to Native American reservations because they are very attracted by the Native American gaming industry. And what has happened is that as that influx of people has come to the reservations, is we have seen poverty rise even higher than it was prior to this stimulus package. We have seen high school dropout rates for the Native American community rising as you've seen Native American gaming becoming more and more popular. You've seen the crime rates rise, drug rates have risen, health problems have risen, and this is all due to the stimulus package that was meant to help the community. So what we're here today because we think it is time to reevaluate that stimulus package that was provided in 1988 and see if there's a better way to cope with these problems. So the areas of quality of life that we truly are focusing on, just to reiterate here, the answer to your question, are education, law enforcement to solve so many of the crime-related and drug-related problems that currently exist on Native American reservations. Better healthcare will probably come from this as well. And then again, just to decrease the poverty rate and unemployment rate by incentivizing your people to obtain better employment opportunities.
I'm not so sure about the optics of this. I feel as though we're already victims. We've been victimized for a couple of centuries, and you're asking us to give up money when those who are in power are doing all they can to get more money. And they're not benefiting us, clearly. Why shouldn't they be asked to give up that money and find ways to transfer it to those state coffers to, in fact, provide for us?
So you are arguing instead that the government gives you additional money instead of you giving the government?
I'm saying perhaps the commercial interests, perhaps other interests, maybe non-gaming industries or individuals or corporations, publicly or privately traded, should be giving up their profits. Why should Bill Gates have $80 billion? Certainly that could go a long way towards alleviating poverty, providing jobs, providing education, healthcare, et cetera, for our children.
Sure. So to answer your question, I think the reason why we are asking you, the Native American population, to be giving some more of your revenues to the state is because we do recognize that a significant proportion of your population is going to benefit from that specifically. And really in the public education sphere, we see that happening the most by having better public education in the areas surrounding Native American trust land. We do believe that the young people on your reservation will obtain better education, which will allow them to be better leaders of your casinos in the future, which will allow that high school dropout rate to decrease so not as many members of your tribes are not finishing their education.
Maybe you all too. I do one more if you don't.
Go for it.
Okay, so there are legal arrangements that are set up between the federal government and our tribes. There are those compacts set up with the states. What's the conflict here, or what's going to have to be resolved on those fronts in order to allow something like this to happen? The federal government would potentially say to us, oh, well, now you're giving to the state, therefore your payments that we give you every year are going to be reduced accordingly because those services are being provided there by the state, and therefore they're no our responsibility, and so we'll actually get hurt even more.
So I think there are two different ways to combat this problem. The first is to either, as the board of directors, contact your state government yourself and ask just to adjust the compact yourself, or you can wait until your compact is going to expire. Most compacts last from 5 to 10 years, so I'm sure your compacts are going to be expiring within the next few years. So you could just wait until expiration date, and at that point when you would have to renegotiate the terms of the compact, at that point you could then implement our solution as well and ask then to raise the percentage that you're paying to state governments in the terms of your compact agreement.
Well, I'm saying that if we go with that route, then how is that going to impact our arrangements with the federal government, which are already in place and are legally binding on us, and we're set with, and they are paying for things for our tribes, our tribal members. Would they not say, well, you're now getting this from the state? What's the potential there for us?
Because of your tribal sovereignty, which we obviously would like to respect, and we would hope that the state governments and the federal government will also be willing to respect, we do not think that it is going to harm your relationship with the state governments at all, especially because the law is not changing. Rather, you are acting upon your social and ethical responsibility to make this change yourself. We'd actually hope that the federal and state government will recognize the initiative that you are taking, and they would honor it by maybe creating an even better relationship with you and your tribal members.
We have reached the end of our questions, but did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No.
Now we're going to go into our general feedback as us to you. I'll start. I think you took on an enormously complex and challenging issue, and I think your preparation for it was outstanding. I think you did an amazing job of coming across professionally and coming across with a lot of clarity around how you wanted to make your case. I'm uncomfortable having the ethical presentation be a one-page sort of response to do to universal law, and I'm thinking that when you do the 10-minute, so much of ethics is throughout your presentation. I think you may want to think about, you're asking someone to be, and you kept mentioning counterintuitive, there needs to be another way of you explaining in such a way that you don't need to keep reinforcing that it's counterintuitive, because that's what can stay with someone. I mean, you're making a case to people to give up something. And it's a hugely difficult thing to do. So it's very courageous that you're doing it. I think you want to think about ways in which you can be more convincing with the information you already have. And I'll come back to that, but my colleagues may well have things to say along the same lines.
Sure. So I agree with everything she said. Your presentation skills were excellent. I really appreciate that none of you have notes or anything for you. I mean, you guys are really well prepared. So and something just to consider when and thank you for fielding our tough questions. You guys did that very well. I just think there's something to be said for, you know, I appreciate the ethical point of view, but this is such a sensitive topic. And if you look at the poorest Native American concentrations, a lot of them actually don't have casinos. And so for that population, I think also a lot of it is, you know, responsible because they're in isolated areas of the country and these are actually providing jobs that didn't exist before. So it's sort of balancing the reliance on the ethical framework, but just the ethics of the situation in which they're in. And Skip.
Yeah, you know, one thing I wanted to comment on is that one of the things that we did in our work, our research is, and we haven't actually proved this, but we've at least found an association that as the economy improved, then we tended to see misconduct go up in businesses around the country. And as the economy worsened, we saw misconduct come down. Goes right to the point that when all this money starts flowing into the reservations from these casinos, well, crime goes up because people are going to flock there and say, I can get a piece of that. Look at that car. I want one of those. And they're willing to start taking risks and people will overlook it potentially. Whereas when things are tough, then people start looking around, they start scrutinizing the behavior of others, you know, in our case, in the companies, you know, that they're working for. So I think that with money comes crime, and there seems to be some relationship there. So that one I'm not so convinced about as being a really strong argument in your favor for this effort. The other thing is, I don't know what it's going to be like in your 10-minute presentation, but I'm thinking that maybe moving around so much between you all could be a little bit distracting because people will only be able to focus on you for 34 seconds, and then you for 28, and then you for 14, and then you for 1 minute and 12 seconds, and then you. And so I don't know what your plan is for that. But that's something to think about because I wondered sometimes, am I really getting the depth of information that one of you might be able to present if you had more than 2 minutes that you took 4 minutes potentially today?
In your research, did you come up with any other conclusions? Essentially, it seems like you're kind of implying that there's mismanagement going on. Is that a fair statement? Okay, which seems really legitimate based on the outcomes. Did you come up with anything that would shift that mismanagement toward more accountability toward their own people? Are people using it for themselves? Are the people in charge of the casinos, is it